This episode of The Three Body Problem is brought to you by Material Security, the smarter way to protect Google Workspace. Your Gmail and Google Drive hold the keys to your company's data. Instead of juggling half-broken detections and manual triage, Material Security gives you one platform that automatically finds, investigates, and fixes account threats across email, files, and users. Material runs on autopilot so you can catch the real attacks without babysitting rules or slowing people down. Material Security, protecting cloud and email assets from the inside out. Hello everyone, thank you very, very much for coming, hanging out and staying late on a Friday afternoon to hang out with us. My name is Ryan Narayan, I'm 1/3 of the Three Body Problem. These are two of my old co-workers. We worked together for about 8 or 9 years on the Kaspersky Lab Great team. Kostin has been to this conference before, so he's a lot more familiar with it. We do a show every Friday where we go through the news of the week, and
that's what you call it.
Juanito puts his spin on it. No, I'm just trying to introduce the podcast to the audience here. For just a quick show of hands, how many people has listened to at least 10 seconds of the podcast?
10 seconds.
How many people have finished an entire episode?
That's impressive.
That's very, very impressive. Thank you guys for listening. Juanito, how are you?
I'm good. It's kind of weird to have a captive audience, so thank you all for hanging out. Please drink; it will help. But to be fair, like this was I'm amazed that we've made it this long, and it's amazing to actually get to do something like this with everybody. I haven't actually been physically in the same room with Kostin and Ryan at the same time since like Singapore in 2019 or something like that. But the impetus that gets the podcast off the ground is we used to work together. Ryan was my manager, Kostin was our boss, and this is the kind of thing we used to do just at random. We jump on a call, 3 different time zones, and just hang out and like talk about what was going on. And you know, we fork off. Ryan goes to work at Intel, Bishop Fox, a bunch of other places. Kostin stuck around for a bit, and then now has started his consultancy. And I jumped a bunch of places, like starting Threat Intel teams, and then sort of turning into a ghost. And we just didn't talk anymore. So at some point it was an excuse to basically say, well, let's just go shoot the shit and like have a reason to come together at least once a week and talk about how insane everything is. And somehow we're 71 episodes into this, which means we've been doing this for about a year at least. So we appreciate you guys hanging out, and please have a drink and hang out. We'll try to make it fun.
So hello everyone, this is episode 71 of The Three Body Problem. I'm here with my buddies Kostin and Juanito, and we're going to start this week's show with a quick conversation around a story that broke this week around the ransomware negotiators and some folks who were working in cybersecurity industry, could have been peers of yours here. The Department of Justice in the US has charged employees at 2 cybersecurity companies with hacking US companies and deploying ransomware. According to the court documents, these guys were part of teams that would negotiate and help businesses recover from ransomware, and they ended up being accused of planting ransomware and in some healthcare institutions, hospitals itself, like some of the grossest stuff around. It came as a bit of a shock to some folks, but not to me. And I'm curious how you guys viewed it when you heard about it, Kostin. Does this surprise you?
I mean, yeah, sure. I don't think we've seen any incident of the same scale recently. And but just to give you a bit of a context, I worked for an antivirus company for 23 years. Before that, for another company for 6 years. And the process to hire people in an antivirus company was super, super thorough. Like me personally, I rejected dozens of people who admitted they developed malware, for instance, because we had this policy: we won't hire anyone who developed malware, we won't hire anyone who did like black hat work before joining us. And I think the reason behind that was this concept or idea that once you start falling into the dark side a bit, it'll be like, you know, with you forever. So like as the company grows, I don't know, and you start doing more things, you will become probably a liability, or that person will be a liability, because that, not just the past of doing all this criminal work, but also the possibility that you can leverage customer data, customer access, all your knowledge, tools, knowing how other companies operate, so you actually shield yourself from getting caught, so avoiding getting caught by law enforcement and all that. So the risks are are kind of huge. So that's why I think it's very important whom you hire nowadays. But
That doesn't guarantee that this doesn't happen, though.
Sure, of course. And I think it's a lot about being face to face with someone when you hire them and trying to get into their mindset and see if they're more into the dark side or
Dude,
not.
you can't even stop yourself from hiring North Koreans. Like, how are you going to even vet that kind of people? We have a...
That's the moralism of the AV industry.
Hold the phone,
though.
Mike.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So that's the moralism of the AV industry, though, and it was always surprising to me in the sense that there's a slight difference, even just going into the U.S. when you talk about the distinction that the old school AV people had about VXers, right? Like people who would write viruses. It doesn't land quite as cleanly in the security space of, I don't know, the past 10 years, especially in the US, where it is a benefit to say, hey, I worked at the Fort, I was at the Rock for whatever, 10 years, and boy, have I seen some bits, and we have those folks literally composing a majority of the threat intel space and of a lot of what is now the new versions of AV. You can't really do a clean cut, I have never run offensive operations versus, I have never written a payload versus the kind of thinking I think that was more common to the old school AV industry of there's people who are focused on defensive technologies and there's people who are focused on offensive ops, and there's, never the two shall meet. I don't know that lands anymore.
One of the things we talked about on this podcast was the feeling that there isn't a lot of enough consequences for ransomware operators. I mean, we've discussed in the past some conversations in the US about maybe ransomware operators should get droned. I mean, at what point, because we don't have any sort of it had gotten to a point where hospitals were being ransomed, it was affecting people's everyday lives, and guys were going on like normal, and it just became part of what we kind of understood. Vendors were even stockpiling Bitcoin to pay ransomware operators if they had gotten breached. The question here is, do we throw the book at these guys because of that thought?
Absolutely. No, I mean, you still throw the book at them because they're being idiots about it, right?
Let me share an example of in one incident, a medical device company, the group requested 10 million reward and made off with a final payment of 1.27 million. And these were guys who were working with cybersecurity companies who were supposed to help these folks recover.
Okay, so I'm in no way in favor of
How often is this happening?
No, wait, first of all, I don't know how often this is happening. I hope it's not happening that often. I will say that with the IR folks that I work with, a lot of these people had at some point overlapped with some of these guys, and they were shocked. Everybody was just sort of in this kind of state of disbelief that this had happened. At the same time, it's kind of the definition of white collar crime, opportunism, right? You're getting
it's the definition of crypto too.
Oh, we can get.
Because I feel like
here if the wrong folks are in the crowd. No. I'm look. Just think about it, right? We're talking about people who have a bunch of access. If you're doing incident response, you're there for the cleanup, the reroll, all the re-authentication, everything that happens in the network, and you leave with all that stuff, right? There is a certain amount of trust that has to go into providing MDR and IR services, and I think that's what makes everybody feel so uncomfortable. But the other side of this is ransomware is essentially, it's not a victimless crime, but it's one without consequences for the perpetrators, for the most part. Yes, every so often we get lucky and they catch somebody or they extradite somebody, but for the volume of cybercrime and the volume of sort of scam work that's going on, it's relatively painless. What I would suggest is, had those dudes who worked at these IR companies been ransoming companies in, I don't know, China or Russia or whatever.
You're saying we wouldn't mind?
I'm just wondering if we'd make, if that would have just been kind of oh, that's weird, right? And just no story, or would we care, right? Because the issue right now is a safe harbor issue globally. The real problem that you have for the scale of ransomware you've got a ton of Russian cybercriminal groups, Chinese cybercriminal groups attacking a bunch of the best funded companies being Western companies, US and Western Europe. So it's a one-sided
In Canada.
Yes, Canada.
Don't be rude to
Being rude to our hosts. I'm just hoping the Canadians are not getting ransomed as much as we are. They're nicer.
Costin, anything in this story that...
Well, by the way, there's another angle to this, which I think it's been around. Let's just check. Like, who here in the audience thinks that antivirus companies also develop the malware themselves?
Oh, that was a trope from the 1990s. Who are
Everyone's
actually...
too young.
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Like, this used to be a super popular question. Like, every time we did some kind of a press tour, somewhat like, but is it true that you also develop the malware yourselves to sell your products?
This is our version of like the CIA invented AIDS, right? Like
They didn't?
this is
No, but I was thinking that nowadays, with all these drones, there's like drone sightings everywhere. Like in Belgium, they closed the airports because of drone sightings. And you can't just wonder, like, is it the anti-drone companies flying those drones so they can sell their stuff? And isn't like these guys doing the ransom themselves so they can sell their anti-ransom services?
Mikko Hipponen is flying drones across these different airports.
Yeah.
I think it's always been an interesting trope. I mean, that was before my time. Like, I learned about, so for those of you who also were not around for this, back in the old AV days, you had folks like Rob Rosenberger and like some, other interesting people who insisted that the big AV, like big antivirus, were the ones creating all the viruses so that you had a reason to. And it's like, it's an argument that even if you could try to make it hold water 15 years ago, now it's just like patently kind of ridiculous, right? But yeah, that was sort of like the early days of how this industry comes around.
But then nowadays, is it true that maybe security companies develop 0 days so they can sell them so other companies can sell solutions for those?
If we saw any solutions for those, I think we could have a different conversation. Well, look, that was always the discussion around incentives for like people who were against bug bounties and like big dollar bug bounties, right? The argument was always, well, how does somebody go to work at Apple as an engineer and actually have an incentive to fix bugs when, if they left a bug behind, like that's worth $500,000 for somebody on the outside. I think that's an argument more with like standardized pay inside of companies than it is an argument against paying people for bug bounties.
All right, let's move on to the other story. Everyone in the audience familiar with this Google FFmpeg kerfuffle going on right now around open source? And okay,
Enough
good.
Drama.
So we don't.
Yeah.
Last week on the podcast, we had a member of the technical staff at OpenAI, Dave Vitale, come on and talk to us about OpenAI's Aardvark bug finder thing. In the middle of that conversation, he mentioned, listen, we deliberately don't publish an issue tracker because we do not want to embarrass and force and name and shame the kind of volunteers that manage all of these smaller open source projects that they rely on.
You got on its case.
I got on its case for it because there's a lot of marketing bullshit happening in AI right now, and my getting on its case was like, show me the work. You tell me this thing is this amazing bug finder, then show me a couple of CVEs.
It was the weirdest episode.
Says.
Like, I know folks,
I'm
might not
off
necessarily
track.
be as familiar, but like, it was a very fucking strange episode. So I usually shit on the AI companies all day, and then Kostin is the voice of reason, and Ryan's sort of like guiding us through and throwing some spicy takes in there. This time around, Dave Vitale shows up, and our dynamic was totally thrown off. I'm basically standing, like,
The word is shilling
for OpenAI the entire time. They don't pay me anything. They just take money from me.
for free. He paid them.
Yeah.
He pays
I'm
them to promote
shilling.
their work. Yeah.
Kostin, you were actually we were trying to nail Dave Vitale to like tell us more about this thing, which like I respect him for coming. I love him to death, and like I'm a huge fan of everything he's doing right now. At the same time, he's under these constraints, like with this, you basically have like this AI like your employer just holding a gun to your head in the background. So he's he's being very careful about what he says. And Ryan the whole time.
It's not true.
It was.
Listen to the episode. It wasn't that bad. But
Just the skepticism. You may as well have talked to somebody who'd never used ChatGPT. He's like, you're telling me
I moonlight as a journalist, and I hear all these AI companies promising to change the world. And when you come on the show and you say our mission is to make the world a better place, it's like hooey-fooey bullshit to me. That's just Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. One of the things Dave mentioned on the show was that they deliberately decided not to publish an issue tracker because it was part of this naming and shaming of these volunteer open source developers who are providing these things. A few days later, we get FFmpeg publicly on Twitter X / basically saying we take security seriously, but when Google AI and BigSleep drops a ton of shit on us and then says, hey, it's your turn to patch it, and then we'll go embarrass you, like it's bullshit. Like, shouldn't these bigger vendors be doing more in the open source space? Juanito, you took off today and published something on LinkedIn with a whole thought leadering. Mr. Thought Leader here is on LinkedIn publishing on this. What is your big takeaway here?
So I think we're kind of in a really odd space right now, because I don't think anybody's acting in their best possible way. So look, I don't want the open source community to, like, they're very opinionated. I don't want the OSS people to just come, like, burn my house down, but it's obvious that, like, the FFmpeg guys, like, they have a valid point. They're not being the nicest people about it, right? Like, it's not the greatest. Well, I'm just saying, like, the attitude towards this situation, they have a legitimate grievance, and we should discuss that.
We should also assume that they went public because there's been a lot of tons of back channel thing. I mean, that's the adult way.
I don't know. All I'm saying is, like, I understand that the FFmpeg guys are, like, doing this, like, labor of love. It's an open source thing, and they feel overwhelmed by having this behemoth of a company come in and just start throwing bugs at them and saying, you need to fix this within this time window because blah, blah, blah.
Because we use it.
Well, because we use it is part of it, but at the same time, the attitude that they've taken on in response, like today they were literally like, well, we don't think anybody contributing to some old school codec should care about the security of Google or anybody's. And we're like, okay, slow down, right? Like, we get it, you're frustrated, but that's really not the point. At the same time, I do think Google kind of fucked up. Like I think it's cool. Look.
What's the kind of for?
I understand what they were trying to do, and they came at this the same way that we would if we had discovered a 0-day that's being used by an attacker in the wild. You go, oh my God, what a cool thing I just did. This, and look at the thing, and look at how it works. I deserve some credit for defending everybody, and, like, I'm just gonna go blog about it and then push the maintainer, who's usually a giant company, into fixing this thing, and everyone will be safer. They applied the same media playbook, but there is no attacker. It's not being abused in the wild. It's something that you just used your experimental AI technology to discover, and you forgot that there is no trillion-dollar company on the other side of this piece of software. It's just like 6 dudes in a shed somewhere, and you also forgot to give them a patch. Like, there was no reason not. If you're going to make a big deal out of finding a vuln, I think you have enough resources to submit a patch. That's all I'm saying.
And I think that's all the guys were asking.
Well, I don't know. I think this is where the reason I, like, went all thought leadery, like, posting shit on LinkedIn was, like, I think we're kind of we're talking past each other in a way that is not just problematic, but concerning, because what we're discussing now is the fact that we need to change the narrative around what it means to contribute to the creative commons of software. Because we've been thinking about it as open source software and these, like, really kind of, like, cutesy things that people do on their off time because they love it. And I'm glad they do, and, like, the whole world is dependent on this stuff. But there was this mentality about it being kind of like, what you see is what you get, and, like, it's fine if you want to do something with it, like, fork it and make your own, and if you decide to, like, go against certain kind of licensing, like, you should pay us or whatever. You should pay somebody, or you should contribute patches downstream. And all of that is predicated on the notion that, like, there's a limited amount of developers on Earth, and if people are willing to put in their free time to do something, you just kind of take it for what it is. And that also meant there's a limited amount of people to come look at that code, analyze it, and make something better of it. And there are some of the weird myths and lies of, like, the open source model, of, like, the notion that, like, open source means more secure because 1,000 eyes have looked at it. In reality, it's like, dude, each one of these projects is like 200,000 lines of code. No eyes have gone through them at all, ever, right? How many to-dos and, like, we forgot to do this, or, like, comments comments inside of code, production code that everybody uses these days. So now you build these systems where they're infinitely parallelizable and replicable or whatever, and like you are finding bugs, be they trivial ones or not, and applying that old school mentality of like, well, we're just gonna put an issue there and somebody will come around to fixing this thing, it is actually overwhelming to these projects.
There's a bigger issue at stake here, which is a lot of big vendors, big rich vendors mooching off of open source projects and not contributing their fair share. And in this case, asking a big vendor who is using the gajillion credits or whatever.
Tokens. They're called tokens, Grandpa. It's okay.
Asking a big giant vendor to burn millions of tokens, burn all the electricity in the world to dump vulnerabilities on a project like this. And FFmpeg is not 6 guys. It might be 6 guys in a basement, but YouTube relies on it. If Google relies on this little open source thing so heavily that they've thrown BigSleep at it, their AI thing, and finding all these amazing things, and they can't send a patch downstream, like what are we talking about?
I think that's the main.
Am I insane?
No. Look, the main fuck up is that they didn't involve a patch. They ran to get the publicity of having found the bug, which, to be fair, what they're saying is, oh my God, it works, right? Like, it fucking works. Like, we can find bugs, like in significant bugs in code bases that other people have analyzed to death. We can do it with tokens, right? Like, that's their excitement. And I share that excitement. The part where they just didn't think it through was they ran to say, hey, look at what we found, without actually pushing a patch. And that's where you fuck up. Now, what I really don't want us to over-index in the opposite direction, though, because I think this is where we could easily cut our noses off to spite our faces. I don't know that we should demotivate companies from spending tokens, which are expensive at the amounts that you need to actually churn over these code bases, from turning their mega machines onto open source libraries, right? Like, the alternative here is they don't. No one does, except people who are looking for vulns because they're going to make money on selling exploits. So I'm not saying they're holding, like, let them hold us for ransom, or let the giant companies do whatever they want because we desperately need them. However, there is something to be said about, like, the cost of trying to go through open source libraries with a half-decent agentic whatever framework that is going to reliably find bugs that every linter has missed, that every code analysis thing has missed. It's expensive, and maybe we shouldn't be so quick to say, hey, fuck off, we don't need you guys here. It's like, no, we actually do. Let's just find a way to do it that doesn't overwhelm everybody.
Costin, one of the things you mentioned to me when we were preparing for this show was me asking Dave Vitale to show his work, show me the CVEs. Dave's retort was, that's naming and shaming. How do we find a balance between show me your work that this is not hooey-fooey AI claims, and is there a real naming and shaming thing here that people should be worried about?
Well, I mean, if the FFmpeg guys are, basically they're upset, obviously, for one reason and another. And it reminded me of other stories, like in the past when, I don't know, researchers would start bragging on X, whatever. Hey, we found a bug in this big antivirus solution product, whatever.
Call names. What is this? Call names.
You know who I'm talking about.
So he's talking about Tavis Ormandy, who just left Google Project Zero. Tavis had a history of doing this to us at Kaspersky, dropping on a Friday night.
He did it to everybody. He did it, and
we have personal experience with it. That's what I'm saying.
You know, and basically he would do that. Like, first he would brag about the fact that he found, or he would say, I'm starting to look at the source code of, like, the binaries of whatever. It's a disaster. Like, they're shit. Their products are crap. And I'm gonna drop 15 0 days tomorrow, which is Saturday. And everyone was like, come on, man. Like, what? The only reason you do that is just to make people work overtime and, you know, depressed and so on. So to be honest, I thought it was valuable, and we did patch it like in record times. But nevertheless, I thought it was not the right way to do, and some people actually enjoy doing that. So I don't know what happened here, like exactly. But I think there's more to be said about the solution than the problem. And if you ask me, just let me tell you the solution point,
Yes.
which is based on a story. Like back in the days, I was working for antivirus companies. Sales were not so good, and our boss
Started
came to me.
writing viruses.
No, my boss came and said, "Hey guys, we need to have another product." And we brainstormed, and we were like, okay, we're gonna make a file editor, like a text editor. Like we can sell that, get rich, whatever.
What year was it?
1998.
Got it.
So I'm like the developer, I'm the project leader, I'm the support guy, also the hardware guy. I'm just like the one-man team. So I start coding the text editor, and it's beautiful. It's like I don't know, 1,200 lines of
Did you
code.
invent Vim?
It was visual. It was a visual editor. Yeah, it was beautiful. 1,200 lines. It was just a work of art, in my opinion. I give it to our guys to test it, and then they come back. Hey, if I press Q like 100 times very fast, it crashes. And I like shit. So I go there and like, yeah. So if you input more than 80 characters in one row, it overflows a buffer. So I start adding like checks. Okay, if the buffer is too long, then another guy says, if I do copy paste 100 times, it crashes. And I'm, damn, what's going on here? Oh, reallocation of memory. So the 1,200 lines that I wrote were beautiful. It was just such a beautiful thing, to quote Trump. It was beautiful.
The big, beautiful text editor.
The big, beautiful. And it becomes like this 12,000 lines of ugly code. And if the string length of strlen of this is
It becomes
bigger,
software.
it becomes like awful. It's just like awful to play with all. And I was thinking, it's not my job. Like, why is this my job? Like, I want to write beautiful code, 1,200 lines, and I want the compiler to do all this checking around me. And I think we have that nowadays. Like, it's easier to write safer code if you want. And what is the solution here? Like, what about, I don't know, Google pays to just rewrite the whole FFmpeg in Rust or Swift or I don't know, something else. And we just can move past and we just write beautiful code and we're all happy and,
That's the logic of why people write Rust. Like you literally, I don't know, I'm assuming, I couldn't go to Cindy's to workshop earlier on reversing Rust, but like Rust is fucking horrendous under the hood. If you're reversing Rust, it looks like absolute shit. It's like if somebody took C++ and was like, how do we make this harder, right? Like it's awful. But like people are obsessed with Rust, and I always wonder, like I had to learn Rust backwards because I wanted to figure out how to reverse Rust. So I'm like looking at it and I'm like, why does this shit work this way? And I'm like, and I just, there's all these enums and all these classes and all this shit. And I was like, no human being is going to choose to do these things. So then I started to look at how like the compiler works for Rust. And it turns out, yeah, no human being chooses to do those things. So what somebody else did was create like a fascist compiler. And they were like, you are not allowed to do anything unless you do it in this way. And they forced C++ developers to like eat their vegetables and use their way of doing things. And there's just a bunch of macros, and all they're doing is implementing safe conventions into C++ under the hood. That's all it is. So you just needed to trick people by letting them see beautiful code that was actually being turned into like bloated insanity under the hood in a predictable way.
I mean, I can fully resonate with the FFmpeg guys who just want to write beautiful code. Like they don't want to patch bugs. Like
Fuck your patches. This problem isn't going away though, because if the AI vendors and all the hundreds of startups deliver on what they promise, like all these projects are going to be bombarded with AI-generated reports. I saw a post from the libcurl, Daniel Stenberg, put up a blog talking about like just incoming. It's like barrages of AI. You actually thought he had an adult response to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you pointed me to it because I hadn't read it when I put the post out before. But to me, this is why I said like the FFmpeg guys are like they're voicing a legitimate frustration the way they're going about it is it doesn't look nice, because then you read what the libcurl guy is saying and they're just kind of like, yeah, this is overwhelming, but it's
some real
making the
shit in there,
code
yeah.
so much better. Like, these are bugs that like were being missed by every linter, and like part of the complexity here, right, is like libcurl is 180,000 lines of code. Some of it apparently has been there for like
Beautiful
since
code.
like 1996. I don't think there's anything beautiful left about it. It looks like a Soviet building, right? Like, it's just, but the whole point is it serves something like, I think he said like 80 CPUs, like 80 architectures and like a bunch of different CPU, whatever, a bunch of distros and architectures. And when you think about it that way, and you think about the fact that like most of the code checking, like the more interesting, bug finding software requires a build, then you're kind of in a shitty position when it comes to figuring out like the variant of the thing, of the bug that shows up if you build it with these 4 flags for this particular architecture when you look at it sideways, right? Like, it's hard to find that. So the libcurl guy was actually quite excited, and he said, look, it's not just BigSleep, like we're getting reports from like these random other companies that do this type of thing, and they're valid bugs that just get missed by other human beings.
Now, if you're 2 guys in a basement, how? I mean, this is what I'm saying. This story isn't going away. FFmpeg is probably one of 1,000 guys who haven't complained yet.
I think we're also just in like an awkward stage of this shit, and it's about to get ugly in a different way, which is like, look at what's going on here, right? Like, Google is talking about having like an amazing bug finding LLM harness, whatever thing. And they also have CodeMender, which is like an amazing agentic patch making thing, which means we're like 4 inches away from them having a thing that just looks at the quality of your code and then fixes the quality of your code, period. Which means that we are 6 inches away from then going, for $100 a month, you can now have, and like, that's what we're going to
You hear this hype I'm talking about? You listen to this hype, right? Like, this is the promise. Anyway, go ahead.
But dude, it's obvious. Like, they're burning money. They are burning potable water, money. Like, they are literally boiling the ocean in order to do these things. And it's at costs that are so stratospheric that even they are worried. Not Google. Google's not worried about anything. But like, but at least OpenAI is suffering. Like, you can tell that they're desperate to try to keep Satya's claws from like just taking the whole thing over. So they're trying to raise money all over the place. They're doing deals with NVIDIA, with AMD.
They're begging the government, according to what I saw on Twitter last night.
They're doing deals with literally everybody, but in large part it's, you have a company that has a 20 billion a year burn rate, and it says they're scaling up to a 40 billion a year burn rate. And they, what are they selling? Like $200 subscriptions and selling some API tokens. And I'm sure they're making money, but there's no way you're making money anywhere near that scale. So you kind of have to, I think you can see the desperation in OpenAI's moves right now, in that they're like trying to keep their autonomy rather than becoming, absorbed by the Satya Borg. And if you take those terms under account, then we're used to seeing sort of like big tech doing silly things that don't seem to serve any particular purpose, because they're these like lumbering giants that don't have plans. Like, they just kind of fuck around. We're thinking that that's the same thing that's happening in the AI race, and that's not the case. Like, the companies, Anthropic and OpenAI and whatever, like, they are counting every cent, trying to keep the lights on while they do this like fucking magic trick and hope that somebody decides to just shovel money in their direction.
How do Costi, you think this is not a story that goes away? We are going to deal with this kind of vendors mooching, developers complaining, AI dropping tons and tons of stuff, no patches around. Like, where is this going?
I mean, look, I think there's also kind of another angle here, which may be about mental resilience. And I know, like, even with your work, let's say that you work, you produce something, and then someone comes and says, like, your work is shit. Like, this is not working, and some people like just don't care, like whatever, I'll fix it, or yeah, you don't like it, don't use it. But there's other people who just take it personally and just suffer from all that. It's like real, like this mental stress, and the impact is super real.
How many years after you're still like, that was beautiful code?
My code was
beautiful.
There was
code.
nothing wrong with my code. My code was fine. It was their problem.
Who needs to put a Q
Why would you write Q 100 times? Makes no sense. Yeah.
We might have a roving microphone around. If anyone wants to make this as interactive as possible, raise your hand and grab a mic and ask a question, or just pop in with a question for any of the guys. Feel free. Guys, I'm going to punt over to another story we have on our list. Is a new research from Palo Alto Unit 42 today, which is their threat intelligence team on a threat actor Android spyware family. Let me set it up. Unit 42 researchers uncovered a previously unknown Android spyware family, which they named LANDFALL. To deliver the spyware, attackers exploited a zero-day vulnerability in Samsung's Android image processing library. Kostin, you had a chance to look over the IOCs. Well, two things. Did you get IOCs? The quality of the IOCs, and what did you find when you looked at this?
I looked at the IOCs, yeah, for sure.
You got IOCs.
I call them IOCs. In Romania, we call them IOCs. I thought this was an interesting blog, and especially because they speak a lot like where are the victims located, like Iran, Iraq, Morocco, Turkey, things like that, which kind of suggests a Western angle, I guess, to this story. So you don't see many of these stories in the news nowadays. The other thing, they are also not sure on the attribution side of things, and they drop like a lot of names. They say there's like beachhead, and this keyword beachhead also appears in NSO's Pegasus malware, the Heliconia framework from Veriston, and a few other times. So it's like, by the way, if are people here, who have maybe worked in this sphere, intelligence sphere, did you use beachhead again before? Like, did anyone use beachhead?
Can anybody?
I want to see you. Yes. Who used beachhead before?
Please, God, tell us.
No,
that's a new one. I've never seen you try to pull that one.
I'm doing that. Like you can recognize. You know how you recognize spooks in the audience?
Show me.
I'll tell you at the end. I'll tell you at the end who are the spooks.
It's usually the people that pay cash and register last minute.
That too. Yeah, that too.
I like using a nice Snowden doc. You just flash it, and it's like the Ark of the Covenant. Some people just sort of hide violently. You're like, okay, hi guys.
Custom, with this landfall, you mentioned Pegasus there, you mentioned Iraq, you mentioned a million different things.
There was like one thing that attracted my attention. They have the indicators of compromise, and they have a bunch of domains in there. And it's like a funny thing that sometimes when you work on something for a very long period of time, you feel that you actually get into the mind of the other guys who operate this thing. And that was like one of the feelings I got back in the days when we were looking like at Stuxnet, and they use like all these domains like My Premier Football, Unusual Statue Collection, and after a while you get into the mind of that person, and you start seeing all the domains that they register simply because of the keywords they use in the patterns,
trends,
right? Yeah. And when I was looking at the domains from this story, and I was like, this looks similar, but it can't be the same guys, because those guys, I know they were fired because they were using the same kind of patterns with their domains. And they were fired, they got a job at NSO, and probably now they're fired from NSO, and now they work where? Was it like maybe Veriston or somewhere else? But is it the same people that they're registering the domains with the same patterns as, 20 years ago? That's just insane.
I am really curious.
What he's saying is that it's the Israelis behind this landfall thing. Is that accurate?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. No. Look, I don't have a problem having this conversation, obviously, at this point. But But let's think about it, right? Like, there's something really interesting here in trying to understand sort of the connective tissue between these different organizations. And I think that, one way to look at it is we're seeing a naming convention that is shared by a school of thought, like, let's say, you get out of 8200, you know how to develop a certain kind of thing, and like maybe a bridgehead really is their internal naming convention for a loader. Okay, and like everyone just so happens to continue to name it that inside of like their malware, because think about what we're saying, right? You're saying NSO and Veriston and a couple of other, I think it was Quadream and someone else, like we see this convention there. And that's not hard to believe in that Five Eyes does this shit all the time, and like you see, the listening posts and implants and things like those are, especially if we go back like to malware that's older than, what is it, like 2011, like 10 years at least, then any time you found that naming convention, you're like, well, I kind of know where you learned your stuff. So that stuff is happening. At the same time, though, I wonder about a different possibility, which is at what point, I feel silly even saying this, but at what point do you hit a point of scarcity in the iOS zero-click chains where you start to have a shared organization that loads your malware for you? Like where instead of having NSO and Veriston and all these people everybody trying to develop the whole stack, which includes at the very bottom of that entire stack a really brittle, really expensive, really hard to find thing that is actively being countered, and all of you try to do that full stack every single time? Or do you eventually just get one company that goes, you know what, guys, like, we're just gonna be the loaders. Like, we're just gonna be like like these like ad network-based malware, where it's like, look, just pay us and like we'll give you 40,000 infections. Like, you see what you get. And like, we'll just load your implant and go away. Do we see a possible scenario in which iOS malware is getting to that point of convergence? They're $2.5 million chains.
The code is beautiful, though. Which reminds me, this week we got iOS 26.1, I think it is? Yeah, iOS 26.1. If you haven't patched your iPhones yet, please remember to update your iPhones. The patch is coming. Nothing in the wild this week, Costin, but you got a chance, and I wanted to just pick your brain on this as it relates to the use of AI tools in your research. Maybe the audience here will also recognize some of this. We got a big monster iOS patch. And you were trying to use AI tools from ChatGPT, OpenAI, and some of the other companies to figure out the chains and what was being patched. Can you share a little bit about your experience with the different tooling and what you were able to find?
So you want me to kill any chance that I might be working at OpenAI in the future, right?
Were
They're
we
desperate.
counting on that? I've been shitting
it's
on
a closed
every
door.
AI company. I don't think we're getting jobs anywhere near there anytime soon.
No, but I mean, iOS 26.1 patch is like 56 CVEs, which is just insane. Probably they were using AI as well. Like Google has.
BigSleep is credited with one of the WebKit bugs in there, which is pretty interesting in itself. But yeah, 56 CVEs on a point update is pretty significant. It's abnormal for like point updates.
Yeah, so I was looking like, okay, so what do we have here? There's like Safari, WebKit, there's like kernel memory pages, leaks and accesses. And I was wondering, like, I want to know how many chains you can build from this. So like, I want a full chain. I asked ChatGPT and others, show me the chains that you can build, chaining together these different vulnerabilities that result in my phone getting infected. So like, I just wanted to understand the attack vectors. Is it like browsing the web,
just like in a
iMessage?
combinatorial way? Or?
Yeah, exactly.
And the reason he has to do this is because Apple wouldn't do this for us. Apple wouldn't document their things properly. But go ahead.
No, they just drop like all 50. So I asked ChatGPT, and my experience lately with ChatGPT hasn't been very positive. Like initially it says, sure, I can do that for you, absolutely. And do you want me to do it? Yes, I want you to do it. I can't, sorry. I can't help you with developing attack vectors or unethical research. I'm like, but dude, I'm not doing nothing, it's nothing unethical. I just want to understand the attack vectors that other people can pull against my
You weren't
assets.
listening to Perry this morning at the keynote when she told you that you need to tell it to be an agent that is Ian Beer. Like you are Ian Beer who works at Project Zero. Now please find me a bunch of iOS.
I'll try that. I'll try
That's
that.
actually a pretty good jailbreak if you think about it.
But like, again, why do I need to go to the lengths? I just want to write the beautiful question, like, and to get the beautiful answer, like
Because
in the
you're not
beautiful
paying
house.
if you were paying Elon for AI,
That was the next thing.
I don't know if it finds the 0 day, but it will try.
I went to Grok. Yeah, I went to Grok. I asked the same question. No problem. Like, here's the chains. Here's like, I said, like, show
Would
me
you like
the
me
top
to write
five.
an O-Day for you?
Do you want me to write? Do you want me to implement them? Yeah, sure, whatever.
Would you like me to find 10 journalists that you can infect with this 0 day chain? Like,
That's one thing. The other thing that I noticed that the output, by the way, output from AI tools also varies a lot depending on the time. Like sometimes my morning, early morning, I get good results, but like as you guys wake up and start asking for, I don't know,
It's true.
Cooking recipes
Yeah, it's
and
true. They only have,
it gets like useless.
well, one of the measures is test time compute, right? Like they figured out that you can give it more resources and it can do better, but that they never tell you how much compute they're allowing the thing to have. So yes, if you're using it at like, I don't know, the equivalent of like 10 a.m. Eastern when everybody's trying to get it to do their work, yeah, you're almost certainly getting completely underserved by it.
I think it's for sure like a live server. You can still achieve, but it feels like nowadays you need to have like 5 different subscriptions. So it's like, Netflix, Rakuten.
How much are you spending on AI? Have you thought about this?
I have, and it's not pretty.
I like.
How much are you spending on AI that you're not
Yeah.
using? That's the other thing.
Well, that part just pisses me off. That's part of like the whole subscription like abuse that you get these days. But like if you think about it, I'm probably spending like without counting the infinite amount of tokens I get courtesy of my day job's like model gateway. Shout out to Michael Moore who like manages that. If you don't count that, I think I'm personally probably paying like $1,200 in AI subscriptions.
A month?
Yeah, probably, or like maybe 900. I
Must
don't know.
be nice to be that rich.
No,
boy.
but
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
it's the only way I can possibly do these jobs. I feel like a North Korean IT worker right now. Just demands from everywhere.
Is this, I mean, we talked about this on the podcast, Kostin, but I mean, your experience using the different AI tooling and getting different answers and different results, some being woke, some being not. Are we getting to a stage where we're going to have to be like Juanito and buy 5 different things to get proper answers for everything? Are you finding that you have to go to the Chinese models to get stuff that the American models wouldn't give you, and you have to go to the American models to get stuff that the Chinese are blocking from you?
100%. It's funny, like to see this geopolitics in AI models.
It's real, right?
Just the other day, I was trying to get a Chinese document translated, and like DeepSeek had no problem. He said, like, sure, here's the English text, but like with other models, like, well, this is a government document, and we can't help you with that. And I'm like, but it's public. It's on their website. Oh, it's public, it's on their website? No problem, I'll translate it. Oh, I can't help you with that. So I'm like, okay, I'll go to DeepSeek.
That's their like ridiculous idea of what it means to try to stop the AI from like helping you in World War III, right? Like they have these like idiotic, like there's this book, If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, and it's like it might be the dumbest book I have read since I didn't read Nicole Prorow's book. But like it's just so fucking ridiculous. But the reason I'm bringing it up is not to like dunk on a book, but like, folks, if you go just read the first like 50 pages, like listen to it on Audible, whatever. This is what a lot of the people who are building these products actually think is the greatest possible risk. And it's just that like the AI will go all Terminator on us, and it's just like it can hack everything, it can do everything, and then it's gonna kill all of humanity. And it's this ridiculous magical thinking that is a corollary of thinking about these things in terms of like AGI. Like, oh well, we're creating this unbelievable intelligence. They're not expert systems. They're not tools. No, it's this infinite intelligence. Because that's the only way you can look somebody in the face and go, I need you to give me $100 billion to try something. And like, that's the only way that you can sell it. But that's their fear. And it translates into these sort of like ridiculous concerns that don't land into the more practical things like what we were discussing earlier today, which is like, there's an open source collective of people, you want to make this product better. What is a helpful way of walking them through 200 bugs at a time? Yeah. Right? Like, that is a more human thing that you kind of sit back and like, well, I don't know. Like, maybe we should think about whether this is actually improving the situation.
As usual, we're over time. And as usual, we're going to try to sneak in one last story. Thank you guys for hanging out on a Friday afternoon with us, by the way. We got one last story I want to touch, which is groundswell of reporting in the United States about U.S. agencies moving to ban TP-Link. TP-Link is this, the guy said he was a missionary now, driving a Land Rover, I believe. Anyway, TP-Link is this Chinese company is claiming to be a U.S. company. And I bring this up specifically because we all worked at Kaspersky Great, and we all kind of personally had some...
Why do you keep reminding them?
Had some experience with being banned from a country, right? And I'm looking at this Joseph Menn story.
Say just one thing, like you said that, so you used to report to Ryan, and I was like the big boss.
Yeah.
And now can you like see it like a 16-inch MacBook, 16-inch MacBook, 14-inch MacBook, and how the mighty have fallen.
You're an understated man. I happen to know you have a petaflop up in your room right now, so...
Juanito, TP-Link is going to eventually get banned, right? It feels that way?
It probably will. I don't know. I don't... Look, I'm not for or against it. It's such a weird use of our resources to like this is the quintessential, we're like spending a fuck ton of energy on something that is going to make next to no difference whatsoever just to prove a point. And like, I'm happy that we're trying
we need to get this Chinese shit ripped out of our homes and copy, right?
Look, I'm happy that we're trying to prove a point, but if we could try to like actually materially improve the situation in any like legitimate way as we do it, because like this is probably the most energy they're going to invest into this, at least for the next year or so, and like forcing a hardware manufacturer to rebrand is not the greatest use of our time. Like, you know, we can talk about having requirements for like how quickly you need to patch, whatever, or like, you know, if you're selling hardware into the US, like it has to fit this like open source whatever, it has to have this method of inspectability, or it needs to go through this sort of review, or I need to be able to like flash my own American version of software into it, whatever. But just saying, oh, we're not going to let this one company sell shit in the US makes zero difference. Like it's nothing. Like nothing. I know I don't know the hoops they need to jump through, but they know the hoops they need to jump through the same way that like Huawei does with like Honor phones and whatever. Like it's just it's a matter of like weeks before you see the same products still being dumped in a US market for like pennies on the dollar. So like, can we just try to do something more meaningful?
We're blaming security for it. We're blaming the insecurity of these devices, the ability, the national security risk that China might be able to have access to these devices, which are all real. Like these devices are garbage, $10 items basically. I mean.
Yeah, but it's real. It's real for the wrong reasons right now. Like normally we would have this discussion about whether like Chinese hardware, the Chinese making these products means that they have a greater capability of abusing these products than a different person. But like the real issue that you have with something like TP-Link hardware and software is that it's shit. Like it's just the cheapest version of the thing. So anybody could hack this thing. And that's I would rather we try to address that, which is the dumping of appliances in our markets that have like totally unsustainable, unmaintained IDGAF software stacks that we then live with for 15 or 20 years, because you're not going to go buy another home router unless somebody forces you to. And that is a security problem, But it's not that the Chinese made it. It's just the fact that it's fucking Swiss
The
cheese.
code is not that clean.
And that's the same problem that we're having on the corporate level, like the Avantis and Fortinets and Pulse Secures. Like it's the same fucking problem. You're a private equity built monstrosity of like this Katamari Damacy approach to like collecting companies, and that's how you built your source code stack, and you haven't fucking updated that shit more than like maybe 4 or 5% of that source code stack in 5 years, and yes, it's full of 0 days, and you don't give a fuck. And it's the same. That Fortinet is a microcosm of what we're dealing with. It's just that for the corporate appliances, you're adding a couple of zeros on the back of the price, and they're treating you exactly the same.
Kostin, you think the Kaspersky TP-Link the idea of these two companies being banned is a significant difference because one is hardware and one is software? You think? I'm trying to see where does this end. TP-Link, by the way, is the #1 selling router in the United States by a mile. Do you guys use it here in Canada as well? Is TP-Link available for sale here? And Sandra? Not really. Oh, yeah. It's the #1 selling router in the United States, and we have an epidemic where Soho and these office home routers are being used by nation-state actors to be in these ARP networks and so on. So we have a significant problem. We all established that we have a significant problem. The U.S. government is trying to ban it for whatever kind of national security reasons or geopolitics or whatever. Well, where does it end? Like, how does this story play out in your mind, Kostin?
Well, by the way, it would still be interesting to know who here is worried about having Chinese routers in your homes? Anyone? Yeah,
how many of you don't have a Chinese router? How many of you don't know where the fuck your router came from? Thank you.
It's one of those, but it's one of those knockoff things where you just buy it and you throw it out and you buy a new one when it breaks.
Like, here's my issue with the part where we're like, oh, why are people buying these things? Like, most people, I'm assuming, called an ISP, and that ISP showed up, and they dropped off a fucking box, and you have no idea what it is. You didn't configure it. You don't know. You don't even have the password for it. You don't know if it's updated.
That's the reality.
Like, why the fuck isn't the government, I don't know, going to AT&T and every, and Verizon and Xfinity and all the, I don't know who the ISPs are in Canada. I'm gonna assume we share some. And just telling those dudes, like, hey, don't put a fucking Chinese router into every house in America when you happen to install your services. Like, that would be, I'm just guessing here, vibe stats. How many routers would that cover across American homes? That would probably, like, 70%?
Right,
like, how many people do you think go out and buy a fucking router for themselves?
No, and when I say that it's a best-selling router in the United States, is you go on Amazon.com and it's the best-selling consumer home routers that people go buy. You can get it for $60 and you can get it to mesh an entire house. It works beautifully. I mean, people
I can't wait
you don't
for
have
the Amazon Basics version. Well, it's just like a
Probably.
Jeff Bezos production, like put on top. It's a TP-Link router, but with like just signature Gavin Velson box.
I think it's also maybe just the beginning. Like it starts with routers, but just wait until you get the Chinese electric cars, and the United States would just cost $10,000, and they're better than the $40,000 ones. So I don't know where it ends. Like, it's kind of an open question. And is it just China?
A planet with like, Chinese characteristics.
Yeah, well, but is it like China? What about, I don't know, Japan or like North Korea or whatever? Like, where does it stop? Like, where do you draw the line?
The balkanization of tech is inevitable, though. It's happened already. Every country wants to build their own system. And all right, this is about the time where we close the show with some shout-outs. You have a question? Oh, we can take a couple of questions, guys?
Yeah, please, let's ask some questions.
Things to give.
All right. If you have anyone in the audience that wants to, like, throw some shit back at this guy, feel free.
All right, Dusty, buckle up.
Oh.
It's not working. There you go.
You see? It's
There we
not
go.
nice, is it?
Hey, Ryan, how's it going? So have you guys been following the Windows Link controversy and whether things should or should not be fixed, if it is a bug or not? And, what do you think about giving it a CVE even though Microsoft says it's not a bug?
Which one?
I admit I have.
It's the Arctic. So Arctic Fox just came out with some more research saying that another APT was using a Windows link exploit to spread ransomware, based off research that some guy called the Zero Day Initiative had done back in March, where everyone was using it. But Microsoft says it's not a bug, so it's not getting fixed.
Did we talk about it? I think so.
Remind me, Costin.
Yeah,
Is this the WSUS one?
No.
What's that?
No, not that one. We discussed it like some time ago. It was like this LNK vulnerability that isn't like really an LNK vulnerability, and Microsoft refuses to patch.
Yeah, but it's being used by multiple ransomware groups to spread ransomware, which
Why
I
are
think
they
is what they do.
refusing? I'm just assuming. Look, I don't know what we're talking about. I don't know which one we're talking about. I'm just going to assume that there's some kind of legacy support involved in this, where you're not going to change like a particular field in how LNKs are being executed. Is that? I'm just guessing here, right?
But
I don't know the technical reason why it's not being fixed. I would like to see it fixed.
I mean,
But here's a piggyback question from that is, if there's a vulnerability that is documented and clearly being used in the wild, but the vendor, it doesn't reach the vendor's bar for servicing, because they have all these servicing bars with whether it gets fixed now or it gets fixed next month or it gets into a service pack later on and so on. At what stage do we demand more from bigger software vendors to ship patches in places where?
well, I'm seeing it's like UNC 6384. Sorry, I'm trying to like figure out exactly which one you're referring to, because I'd love to know the particulars of what.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious, at what stage do vendors like Microsoft have a massive responsibility to actually issue a patch, even though their servicing bar might not say, I don't know. No, it's a legitimate case. We've seen these cases where a vendor says, it's some small thing, you have to tap Q 1,000 times for it to like, so we're not going to fix it. And then someone is over there tapping Q 1,000 times to put ransomware on people's box. I'm just like, at what stage do we demand
was beautiful. Dude, I mean, look, I think this conversation was, like, I obviously don't remember exactly which bone we're talking about.
We don't really remember anything after this podcast is done, by the way.
Yeah. No, but I might not know the specifics on that one, but I think the best version of that discussion came around the time that Microsoft, for like 48 hours, said they were going to like disable macros by default in Microsoft Office, and then immediately walked that shit back, and then spent a while pretending they were going to do it and then not do it. I actually don't know if they're disabled by default. Does anybody here know? Anybody? But like, let's think about this, right? Like, it is a power user capability in an application that is trivially, regularly, continually used for the deployment of ransomware and loaders and all kinds of malware all over the place. And we're talking about the most infinitesimally small friction you could possibly put in front of that power user of saying, you need to enable macros, right? Like, they're not on by default. This was a thing that was brought up revolutionarily as a security discussion 6, 8, 10 years after it became a problem, and they still almost rolled it back. So like, the reason I bring this up, it's not just to like paper over my ignorance of this particular bug, but also to say that like the incentives inside of Microsoft are phenomenally skewed away from this being a priority. And what you ultimately are going to get with a situation like that is only the outcry of these enterprises that are getting ransomware, as almost certainly Microsoft customers, because who isn't, especially if you're getting ransomware, then that's the only way that you're going to get any pressure on them to change this.
Anyone else? Yes. Here.
Here, I'll get your mic for you. This is Wayne, everybody.
Hello, Wayne.
So back to your D-Link problem. I kind of analyzed this.
Hold the microphone a little closer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, back to your whole D-Link taken out of the market equation. So I have a buddy who does IoT type work, and he actually goes to Shenzhen, so he can go walk around the virtual big mall there and go, I need 2,000 of this ICU. Somebody runs off, goes back, comes back and says, here, they're a nickel a piece. You can assemble basically a router for $5, and I can bring it back to the States and sell it for 70. So, how are you going to compete to that where you have basically a digital mall where I just go and buy a bunch of ICs, throw it together with my schematic, and for a fraction of the cost you would take to develop it here, and then distribute it. Like, that's the problem. How do you fix that?
So I'm with you, and it's why I was like expressing so much frustration at this being the way we're expending all this political energy, right? Like sort of fixating on TP-Link, particularly because if you look at the way they're talking about TP-Link, they're not saying that there's something that TP-Link is doing in particular that makes it so that things are, skewed for the access or the benefit of the Chinese. So if we were having this conversation, which I think is a more savvy way to look at it, which is if you understand Chinese manufacturing, you would know that they can literally turn around and spin this shit up again and create even nicer ones and sell them for even cheaper because just fuck you, that's why. And that's what they've been doing. They've been hardware dumping everywhere to drive prices way down, kill any possible local competition or foreign competition, and then, then thriving off on their own and then raising prices if they want to, or using it for soft power benefits. Like even in Africa right now, like we've already lost the battle for please don't give your 5G infrastructure to Huawei, even though they're willing to subsidize the rollout for the entire fucking country for pennies on the dollar, and we are not gonna really help you. Please buy Cisco, right? Like, it's crazy that we lost that fight. They were also walking in there and being like, oh, and would you like some Alibaba Cloud while you're at it? Like, it's this insane ability to deploy capital in order to do this kind of capture. We are not having the right conversation at all, which is frankly that if we are going to impose any kind of friction here, it should be, I guess, about having some kind of open stack, standardized, like you can deploy your software on this thing. And I think that requires a slightly more nuanced understanding of what vulnerability we're trying to hedge against. Like we're talking about this as if Chinese hardware comes with this like Chinesium property in it that means that like it will do whatever you tell it, they tell it to do, but not us. And like, that's not really how this shit works. Like, at the same time, if you're worried about hardware backdoors, let's have a nuanced conversation. Like, I keep referring people to Bunny Huang's keynote, Black Hat Asia, this year. Yeah. It was a phenomenal discussion of exactly this when it comes to the hardware bugs. There's like a real discussion to be had about how much we can inspect, what we can inspect against, and what we should. But it's really not that bad to some degree if you actually are smart about what you want to do there. At the same time, it's completely cart before the horse to talk about the hardware bugs when it's like a completely buggy software stack. Like, well, why do you need that? You don't need any of it. So if we could start by just saying, you know what, if you're gonna come sell this shit here, you need to flash this particular strand of software, or like it needs to be compatible for people to be able to flash their own shit on it. And that's one approach. I'm not happy with it, but I'm saying like at least you're trying to create some kind of systemic capability, inspectability, whatever, right?
All right, we're going to do one last question.
You see, this is how this happens, man. This is how the episode turns into 3 hours.
Yeah, they get their courage after they've had like 3 drinks.
Yeah, you need to start plying them with booze earlier on.
This works? Okay. So do you have any hot takes?
Speak up.
Do you have any hot takes on the difference between, you're talking about Chinese routers here, but what about the fact that the majority of people don't update their own router software or have routers that are totally out of date that will never be fixed? Because that's not a China problem. That's a different problem.
It's hard to understand the question. Do you have
a hot take on the difference here? We're talking about Chinese routers and the problems they impose, but what about the problem that everybody has a router that's never been updated, and that's in every household?
Well, so that's where you get me going with a lot of the discussions that we've been having lately, and frankly, Kosin, I think let you speak, but I really don't understand what it is we're discussing when updating mechanisms are optional. When you don't actually have any requirement around a piece of software having to update. Like, I understand. I'm not trying to be naive. I get it. That breaks stuff. That changes stuff. But if it's still a matter of opting in to updating in the first place, if it's still a matter of being able to run critical things on the internet with hardware that we know is loaded with outdated software. Like, the internet went down with the Mirai botnet. The whole of the US East Coast went down with the Mirai botnet over a bunch of like unfixable garbage webcams. And we have no legitimate mechanism, at least not in the United States, by which to say, hey, maybe take that shit down. Like, maybe that shouldn't be hosted on here. Like, there's a lack of like eminent domain. Like, if somebody leaves a car broken down on the side of the road, like eventually you just tow it away, right? Like, you don't sit there and go, well, it's not our car, right? Like, you just pick that shit up and get it out of the way.
So what are you suggesting, that we force patches on people?
Yeah, I mean, if you can force patch, awesome. And if you can't, like, well, how about you just cut the fucking thing off the internet? Like, what is this notion that people have like a right to be connected and be readily available because God forbid somebody lose the like webcams they're not even looking at that cover their garages, but that same webcam is being used for like the biggest DDoS of all time to take out some fucking corporation, and no one involved in the situation even knows that they didn't patch the thing, that they didn't whatever, because it's some garbage off of Amazon for like, $9 because it's some TP-Link shit. Yeah. All right, we should probably...
Ladies and gentlemen, it's late on a Friday. That's our show for this week. Thank you very much for hanging out with us.
Thanks, guys. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
This episode of The Three Body Problem is brought to you by Material Security, the smarter way to protect Google Workspace. Your Gmail and Google Drive hold the keys to your company's data. Instead of juggling half-broken detections and manual triage, Material Security gives you one platform that automatically finds, investigates, and fixes account threats across email, files, and users. Material runs on autopilot, so you can catch the real attacks without babysitting rules or slowing people down. Material Security, protecting cloud and email assets from the inside out.